we would like to replace it with something else. That's can actually protect the horn.
Original. Let's throw it out.
Yeah. Unless it's like wire from the inside.
Yeah, even then.
I don't know.
Oh. But yeah, it's really kind of cool. It's so rare that you see original cases. Yeah. Oh, look at that. So it's got a little
tag in there.
Yeah.
Nothing in the phone book for that company, and I've tried to get a hold of a couple music shops back there. I think just judging by the tone of the voice from the people after answering the phone, they're way too young to acknowledge that music at that time.
Got a little thing here that's supposed to anchor up there. Wow. Yeah, it's a lot of stress cracking in the bottom bow cap. That's a lot of it. Yeah, so this bow cap is
Hiding things.
towards the end of its days. It's typical on a lot of these large old tubas, which is why we make them. They're so this is really kind of fun. Okay. Yeah, the rotors spindles are really worn.
Well, like I say, it's a 100-year-old horn.
Yeah. That gives you a good idea of scale, huh?
Jeez.
Spent many an hour in the buffing room polishing stuff like this. That's nothing there. Okay. But yeah, it's got a little...
Grind mark almost up there.
Yeah, it's had some repair work done to it over the years. You can see a lot of hammer marks in the top bow. And the rotors are really pretty interesting. I would imagine
everybody seems to be inquiring
turbine
about how you would get these out and service them.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're top-load rotors, obviously. If you've ever looked at like a lot of the old Civil War rotary horns, they were top-load. And depending on which way you looked at it, I guess. But the problems is that servicing them can be a bit of a drag when they start getting worn and loosey-goosey, especially on the back side. But when you push on these, we can detect that there's a little bit of play in there.
From the shaft wiggling a little bit?
Yeah, if you can come over here and look, if I can just put my fingers on each side of the stop arm screw, and I just move it side to side, you can see that the whole stop arm and everything is moving, which tells us that the bearing that the spindle is going through is pretty severely worn, which is not a surprise, but it's also repairable. The one good thing, though, about these is because the backside, down in the bottom of the rotor,
there's a little cup down
there's just a little spot there where the back spindle sets in, and because that's where it's at, it's not going to suffer as much wear and tear. So it's very likely that all that needs to be done is the bearings that unscrew on the backs of these rotors are going to just need to be swedged with their respective spindles. So it should be okay. There's a lot of play in the actual stop arm on the shaft, so that's going to need to be corrected. The fourth valve is obviously the best one of the bunch.
Yeah.
I would say that from the looks of these rotors, I mean, they could have actually been made by Martin, but odds are probably good that they purchased them from one of the European manufacturers, probably like Cervini. Or maybe even, other companies like Huddle and that sort of thing. And then they have, of course, the adjustment screws here. And they have these kind of worm screws.
Really kind of cool.
Yeah.
Get the heights that are all the same.
Yeah, it reminds me of a tuba that I did for a friend a long time ago. That was actually a Cervini tuba that was used at the Columbian Exposition in 1892.
Really?
It was the horn that was the demo horn in Chicago. And he had uncovered it, and eventually I had to redo a lot of work on it, but eventually the horn was loaned to Cerveni, and they restored it, and then they actually took it to, I don't remember what the convention was, it was like a NAMM convention or something like that, in 1992, and they displayed the instrument for their 150th anniversary, which was really neat. You know?
That is nice.
And eventually, and Cerveni fixed it all up free of charge. All the owner had to do was pay for the shipping to and from. But he was without the horn for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. They did eventually return it to him. I have no idea where that horn went, but it was a beautiful silver-plated Cerveni rotary tuba. It's a big one.
Yeah.
So this is pretty neat. Ugh. Let's go ahead and lay it down here. Ugh. You did get this for a pretty good price for such a rare collectible.
I was really surprised that I thought the gun horn would go for significantly more than it did.
Yeah.
And I think everybody else was thinking the same thing.
Well, you know, when you sent me the pictures of it, I was like, wow, there's going to be a collector out there, someone who's going to throw a bunch of money at this. But still, even it's a lot of money. You know,
No, it is. For an old tuba.
for an old tuba, yeah. So it's a really neat horn. It's not horrible. The worst parts, of course, are the rotors, wear in them, and what you see down here.
See the cracks? Yes.
Yeah. Because somebody, I don't think this finish is totally original. I think somebody bead blasted it later on, and that's why this happened. Is they bead blasted it with the bow cap on, and that's why it's buckling and cracking right here. It's because bead blasting has a hardening effect and expanding and contracting the materials from one side of the sheet metal to the other, and it's also why it's dangerous when you're bead blasting a tuba or refinishing. You find weak spots in it, and they can literally twist the metal. It'll completely warp it, and it'll actually crack. I've done it myself. It's a total drag, and repairing it can be really involved. So, you know, it's like I was pointing out, you know, up here, you can see the hammer marks on the back. If you look right here, see all the peening?
Yes.
Okay, so that's dead giveaway right there. But this is old repair work. I especially like the, looks like somebody put some lacquer on here.
To try and keep it from...
Yeah. But that's not a surprise.
That was redone as well.
Yeah, little touch-ups here and there. All these signs of, you know, its past life. But yeah, these bows were made in halves. You can see the seams on the outside and then the seam on the inside, which is not really commonplace. But on some of these big Martin tubas with these giant bows, it seems to be the case. Well, and it makes sense because the way that they would produce something like this is totally by hand. They wouldn't actually do like during the time period when this horn was made. Kahn would actually have custom dies for their presses to make the halves.
Yeah,
just like they do in some manufacturers to this day. They make the two halves of like the bow on the bottom of a saxophone, the bell bow. They did pretty much not do that with these kind of horns. That would require a very expensive set of dies and knives to be made. So really, the way they did this is the way that a lot of handmade tubas are made. You know, when they talk about doing the bottom bow, they literally take two halves of sheet metal, cut out a pattern, put the two together, and then literally beat them out into a tapered tube. And because they're already cut, you know, kind of a horseshoe, open horseshoe shape.
Yeah.
Well, that's how they probably did this. That's the most economical way to make a one-off tuba like this. And when you have to make these really large diameter branches, you make the two halves. You put them together, and then you beat them out. They had the craftsmen then. I mean, they're out there still, but not very many of them. And that's how they did all of these large branches on these Martins, from what I've seen. The ones that I've had apart that I overhauled, you could see the seams in them. But if you look like at a lot of tubas, that you look for the seam, there's only one seam, and it's usually on the back, and it's on the side. And they started out as a straight tube, and they were bent. And if they're handmade, they use certain methods. If they were hydroformed, they use others, and sometimes, you know, handmade and hydroforming is put together, you know, do a real good job bending it, shaping it, and everything, and then hydroform it in the same dies as your production horns. But that gives you a real consistent wall thickness all the way around, where hydroformed is going to be thinner on this side than on this side.
Okay.
Because they start with a straight tube and blow it up.
Blow it up. Mm-hmm.
So overall, it's really a cool tuba, but it's definitely not the original finish.
Mm-hmm.
There again, you can look like right here in the mount pipe. See the soldering?
Yes.
It's plated over.
Mm-hmm.
It's awful soldering, though.
No.
Martin would never have done that. Would have never left the factory like that. So this horn's been around and it's been worked on.
I think this looks like it's a patch up there for a hole.
Actually,
same thing on the end. I think it's the fourth valve trip as well.
when I see stuff like this, it's always kind of weird because you look at on like some of those York tubas, you'll see like patent, little tag, and it's the same shape.
Yeah.
But that's not what that is. That's a patch on the pipe.
This one's got the patent, or that's the
union
union
well,
tag.
there you go. Yeah. So when I see something like that, there again, you go, yeah, this has been overhauled.
Yeah.
And it might have been overhauled at any number of factories. Because back in the day when this was overhauled, which was obviously a long, long time ago, well, this horn, there weren't any shops like, little shops like this really that would take on something like this. You'd send it to a
production
factory.
shop?
Not that does this, because you got to have plating, and there were some shops that did, but really, from what I've seen, if this horn was like to be overhauled, say in the 1940s or the 1930s, which would probably be when this was done, they would have sent it to a place like Kahn, or even King, and Martin might even take the horn back in and redo it for you. But Martin, I don't believe, is a really very big company, ever. So it's likely that the tuba was sent to a company like Kahn, and they overhauled it, and they did kind of a what you see here. It's certainly not the way I would have done it, but I mean, you look at some of those new King tubas with the frosted finishes on them, and they're frosted on all the ferrules and everything else. It's like, wait a minute, guys, come on. These could have been really pretty if you just went down and bought yourself a $3 roll of masking tape and a razor blade. So this is really cool. This is a very, very neat horn. A lot of interesting stuff here, but really unique. I've never ever seen one like this. Now I know Martin made rotary tubas. I have a rotary E-flat Martin, 4 rotary valves, and we have right over there. There's a 3-valve rotary Martin tuba.
Front action.
Front action, yeah. And
one of the guys on TubaNet said he had a catalog from the 20s that stated that any Martin tuba could be made in front action, top action, rotor valve, or piston.
Sure.
So,
and if you look at some of the old York catalogs, they don't really go into a lot of detail, but you could go to them, and well, I guess that's what Mr. Donatelli did when when he went to place his order for the Chicago York tuba.
Yes.
That first one that eventually became Objectives, yeah. And so, you could go to them, and it's like a lot of things, you walk into the shop and you say, I want this. If your pockets are deep enough, and they've got the time and the wherewithal, sure, they'd build it for you. I don't know how many manufacturers are keen to that nowadays. Epplesheim and some of those guys, they're great makers, and you can get stuff made. I don't know how well it would play. It's a one-off, it's not like it's production or anything like that. But this was one of those kind of horns. 4-valve top action rotary, though, you go, oh, okay.
Yeah, he was just used to a top action horn, and that's what he wanted when he stepped up, or what?
Yeah, and then you look at this, you go, this was a very expensive purchase.
Yes,
when it was made
back in the 20s.
Well, give me a second. Let me grab one of my books here, because I do have some Martin numbers. Maybe we've got something. What is the serial number on this? Is it one? Okay, 12877. Well, let's take a look. A lot of the numbers are really not very good. I got these numbers from a friend of mine years and years and years ago, who got them from some Martin people. So we can at least take a look at those. See what we got, here we go. Martin Company serial numbers. Selmer. These are Martin. It's not much. It's just a page. Old typewriter. Somebody's Smith Corona. You know.
Probably an underwear royal.
Yeah. Who knows? So we're basically 12,000. So this is definitely pre-1940. Okay, so I've got 17,221 was December 8th, 1919. So 17,000 is the oldest numbers that I have here right now. So it makes more sense, you know, that this being 12,000 and it was,
what kind of jumps were they doing? It looks like 2,000
yeah,
years
from
or
17,000 to at the end of 1919 to towards the end of 1920 they went 19,400. So they did maybe 1,200 instruments total over the course of a year. That's not very many horns if you're a major, you know, band instrument manufacturer, and that's everything. That's trombones, trumpets.
Notice the next one there from 20 to 21. Looks like there's only about 400 or 500 horns.
But that's January.
Okay.
So we've got, you know, from November to January. So, you know, 482 to 900. So that's 500 horns. Actually, 450 horns roughly from November. The beginning of November to the beginning of January, so in 3 months, or 2 months, yeah, November, December, January, 2 months. So that's only 450, that's 250 horns a month. That's, and in 1911, I think Kahn was making at like 800 horns a month.
Yeah, no. Jeez.
So, you know, there's obviously a difference there. So if we're going at, keep forgetting the number here, 12,000. If we go backwards, 12,000. It's like that's 5,000. So this instrument was probably made. See, the World War I. That would have slowed down production because of the materials being used.
It's 12 to what? 12 to
12
17?
to 17. So I would be guessing this instrument was probably made between 1912 and 1914.
Okay. That seems like a reasonable
You
assumption.
know, I would imagine that you know there would be. I would have, if the war years weren't in there, I'd be thinking 1917. But because of war years, strategic metals, things like that even during World War I, that would have cut back some production, and we don't have any mention of military details like, you know, the USN on the Yorks and USQMC and all that kind of stuff, you know. So this was made for commercial use. It was obviously special order. It had to have been special order, and so I would say, yeah, it had to have been made between 1910 and 1914. That's, you know, and from the looks of it and the styling and everything, I'd say, yeah, and even, you know, the pattern on the engraving, which is really
cool.
It's cool, but did you notice it's really plain?
Yeah, it is.
It's just the simple lines. It doesn't have any of the shadowing in it, all of that. It's very, very bland, which is kind of interesting, and it never was anything more than that, because the engraving is still real solid, but there is absolutely no sign. It's not been washed out, it's not been heavily buffed on or anything like that, but there is absolutely no finer engraving in there at all. It's just a real, probably one of the plainest floral patterns I think I've ever seen, especially when it's that big, you know. So it's really neat, but it's definitely it's been overhauled.
Okay. It's not that shocking, I don't think.
No, not at all, not at all. I've seen plenty of horns that were overhauled, and they were all, you know, overhauled like during the Second World War. I think about it, a lot of horns were being overhauled. I mean, that only makes sense because, you know, and people sent them to factory shops because a lot of factories were, you know, not busy making horns.
Yeah.
You know, unless you're Con, I guess you're making gyroscopes and navigation equipment and things like that for the worker. But you still had people that needed work, you know, metal finishers and things like that. And it didn't take any more real material to rebuild a tuba than it did to, you know, to make one. It took little material to rebuild them, and they had facilities and repair facilities. So from some of the double value phoniums I saw that were overhauled like in the late 50s, late 60s, because Con still had facilities. This kind of looks like that.
Smacks of that.
Yeah, big time. The finishing, the level of detail, you know, quality is okay, but it's kind of odd in some ways when you look at it. But there's just things that are done here that are to clean it up and make it look decent. But they didn't rebuild the rotors. But that's not. I've seen some modern day, you know, production facilities that people have had horns overhauled at, and they came back and the valves were still junk. You know, the horn was nice and shiny, and they kind of took the dents out. Not the best work in the world, but you know, the valves were all loosey goosey and leaky.
There's a chance maybe that the valves were rebuilt and they just have worn since then?
No. I doubt it very much, because this horn doesn't look like it has as much wear on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's really funny is if you look at the bell, you can still see the spinning lines.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And it makes you wonder, you know, how is that? Is that from the original manufacturer? Probably, because the way they spun it, it was spun kind of hastily, and when they overhauled it, that it's very likely that that's when those spinning lines came through, because they sand and polish it, you know, after it was made, but there's going to still be some of that telltale signs on the inside, and then when you roll it and press it and burnish it, that's going to all raise to the surface the second time around. And so you can, if you look at it just right, you can see the light, and it's just showing the spinning lines all the way up to there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that too.
It's a stopping off point, and that's the way, you know, they did a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it's just that the horn is in really good shape. But when you start looking at it, you start seeing things underneath the plating, and you go, "Oh, okay. Well, doesn't surprise me." And like I get back to these stress cracks, because
a couple big ones.
yeah, that is just like it, and it's actually similar to Ian's Holton. Had the same problems because his bow cap was also bead blasted. If I'm remembering correctly, it had blasting on the guard.
Probably, yeah.
And that horn had been done in that manner, and that horn had also sustained very substantial cracking. This sort of stuff, the way that it is from blasting. That's not from age.
Okay.
From the way I look at it, because it's from when you bead blast the metal, it starts to do this, and it gets these ridges in it. That York tuba that we have here, when I was bead blasting it, I ran into a problem with a bow, an inner bow, when I was blasting it. It did that just big time. And the only way I could fix it is I had to take that whole bow out, reshape that metal, anneal it, braze the crack. And then what I did was I filled it with Surlyn, metal alloy filler metal, and block it using steel dies to stamp all that stuff smooth and clean it, and then I bead blasted it while it was full of Surlyn.
Okay.
And then once that was done, because that held everything and kept it from warping, then I took the whole finished piece that was bead blasted then after I removed the Surlyn, and then I put it back in the horn and went, no, thou shalt not touch this with the blasting cap, or the blasting gun at all from this point forward. Stay off, you know, because that, if I touch it again, it'll do the same thing and warp. And so these are all signs of the overhauling. And they had to, you know, there's a lot of just.
There's a lot of work down there. It's sticking.
You can see, if you like look in this area here, you can see that's all peened. It's all hammer marks there. This was before the dent machine.
Yeah.
You know, using balls and they were using hammers and they shaped it and fit it and soldered it on, and then they bead blasted over it because there's a gap in there and it's kind of work hardened already. And that's why it cracked right along the solder edge, because this isn't completely filled with solder.
No.
It's only soldered around the edge.
Yeah.
But still, that doesn't take anything away from the fact that it's just a really stinking cool horn. But yeah, you can see those rotors down there. Yeah.
No, you got. I'm good here.
Why don't you come and get on the come if you want?
Hey, wanna take a shot of that?
I have a lot of time to look at it.
And this part here should unscrew. I don't know if any of these are loose
Should.
enough.
Screw.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see if we can loosen one up. The back side of the rotor is solid. And it just has a little tube that the end of the rotor, the spindle on the bottom of the rotor, sets down into, and that's underneath here. So let's see.
That was really interesting. It looks like
Oh, there we go. So
there's two screw caps here that are the linkage is held on with screws, and the ones
Yeah.
you can get to with a screwdriver, and the other ones are held on
Hey,
with thumb screws.
Drew, could you get me a screwdriver from Steve-O over there? I'm just going to see if I can undo this one rotor. There's all these people who have question marks about it. Ian here can take his video and he can share it with some people, you know, and say, this is how it comes off. Okay, so we're just going to undo this odd screw that's underneath here. There we go. I like the washer too. That's
That's
nice
a good touch.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's original, right?
Yeah, sure.
There she goes.
Look at that. That just popped off. Just as nice as you please. Okay. And then so here's our bearing, and that's all fixed into the cap. And our rotor just
Jeez.
lifts right out, just like that. Pretty disgusting.
Pretty disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That gunk might be original.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. That's some pretty heavy-duty industrial sewage in there.
She needs a cleaning.
See, Ian, you want to be a repair person?
Oh, I already
you
know
want to do
about-
brass instruments?
I already know.
Oh, you ain't been there yet. You only been at it a little while. We could tell you all sorts of horror stories. Okay, see how that just goes on there like that. And
There's the bearing down there.
the bearing is fixed on the back side. Okay, so
To get that out,
it doesn't come out.
Doesn't come
That's
out.
fixed to the back side. If you want to take that out, if this were like a really, really badly damaged rotor,
okay.
and we were to rebuild it, we're gonna, copper build up this stuff and re-sleeve these. If these are really worn, we would actually add metal to these. I wouldn't try to plate them up. That would be just a waste of time, and it would not do a very good job. You'd remachine this straight, sleeve new metal onto it, and you could probably get away with lead tin soldering it if it's got enough to work with. Or you could braze it on if you really wanted to get crazy. But I think lead tin soldering would at least make it so that it would be serviceable in the future. You could unsolder it, take the piece off, and put new metal on and remachine it.
Okay.
But the top spindle here is not too bad on this one, but it does have a fair amount of play. So
It'd be the same deal again for the top side as well to get it to.
no, actually, this part here, it's not too bad, but we have tools here that we would swedge, shrink it on here, and that works really good. But this particular bearing isn't really horrible.
Oh, you don't need to whisper.
Inside, it's been sleeved though, as you can see.
It has.
Somebody's put a piece of metal in there. I've seen that, and to be honest, I've done it. But it's old-fashioned approach of repairing stuff. Another sign that this instrument's had work done to it. And I believe those rotors are hollow. Yeah, if you look on the
As I
side.
look, I can see the.
Yeah, if you look on the side here, you can see that there's a line.
Where it was cut.
Well, that's where the way I make my rotors too. They actually punch a hole at 90 degrees, and then they slide a piece of metal in there,
Yeah.
and it's you know, it's milled and machined and all that kind of stuff, but this is actually soldered in or brazed. I've even seen some that were actually lead tin soldered, believe it or not. It's kind of weird.
Wow.
That's, and the reason I knew they were lead tin soldered because the solder had given up the ghost and it was just falling apart. Same with the end pieces were just falling out. So, but that makes for a nice light rotor, but this one's not, you know, there's a lot of metal there too.
They really need a cleaning, don't they?
Mm-hmm. So this instrument's been around. It's seen a lot. But it's got some things here where it's been, you know, cobbled together, you know, trying to fix stuff up, I guess. Let's see, that's got a 2 hash mark on that. Why does that got that on there? But it's got a 3 on the top. Okay, it's got a 3
Who are you gonna trust?
there, and then there's a 3 on the bearing. And there's a little, yeah, so there's no, and there's another 3 hash marks. It's like, how many times do you have to tell us that this is the 3rd bearing? Okay. Don't pay attention to that one that says 2. It's actually a 3. Okay, then you just slide that in there, screw it down. And, but yeah, it's got a bit of play in it. It's
In the lower bearing.
and the top here. Lower is, it's hard to tell with the way things are.
It's
Yeah, it's another
piece
patch. Yeah, isn't that
I haven't
something?
seen that one yet.
Okay, and then this has got the round back on. Okay, so that goes like that. So they probably have this. This one's probably kept loose because of the binding. Yeah, that's why that one came off so easy. It's because the bearing fit isn't very good, so they just loosened it up. Now, just put all this back together again. So have you played it any?
I pretty much took it directly from the FedEx terminal when I got the horn to a community band practice
And?
tried it out. Well, hopefully I'll give her a shot here and see it's going to...
breathy!
No, actually not. I don't think you have to put too much air into it to get quite a bit out of it.
Well, these big horns were designed, you know, was it, I remember an article that Peter Hirschbrunner Sr., when he was talking in the article, I think it was in one of the old TUBA journals, back in, I think it was like in 1989 issue, and it was on the York Brunners. And there were some really cool pictures of Peter in there, but I think one of the things that Peter Hirschbrunner said about the large horns is, he said, described it as, they were designed to be acoustically efficient. That's what these giant bodies were, and I guess York, as far as being acoustically efficient, nailed it.
Nailed it.
And you know, we've had a lot of big, enormous tubas come through here, and the Holtons are that way too. You don't have to put a lot of air into them if they're working right. You know, if they're not working right, well, you have to just try to blow into a trash can. So that's about all they're capable of doing, is being trash receptacles at that point. But yeah, it only makes sense. Mind if I give it on?
No, please.
Let's see if we can find something that will fit. Does this take an American
American
shank?
shank.
Oh. That's alright. I didn't need my spine today. Be right back.